Often, objects require other objects as a dependency. For example, the Magento Catalog Model product class. If we look at this constructor, we can see it receives many arguments, and all but one are objects. Please keep in mind that almost all of those objects probably are injected as shared instances by the ObjectManager, which means the same objects are used all over Magento. One of these arguments here is a file system instance. The product class uses it in the getMediaGalleryImages method. It uses the file system to get a directory read object to build the absolute path to a product image file. For an example's sake, let's assume we are required to copy images from a mounted directory into the Magento PubMedia folder on the fly if they do not exist there yet. There are many ways to implement this, but one way would be to rewrite the file system class with a di.xml preference. Then, when a directory read instance is requested, our customized file system class could return a custom directory reader, which in turn, when getAbsolutePath is called, could copy over the product image if needed. However, using a preference is problematic because the file system instance is used by many other objects besides the product too, and our customizations might have unintended consequences in other parts of the system. Luckily, Magento allows for more fine-grained customizations, that is, preferences that are only used for specific types. In this example scenario, we can specify a class rewrite for file system, but only if it is used as a constructor dependency for product instances. To do that, we configure the file system argument for the product model in di.xml. And the value of the attribute node is the class name of our customized file system class. And if the custom file system class extends the original, this is in effect a class rewrite, but only within the scope of one type. Let's try it out. Here I have a customized file system and directory read class. So the file system, when getDirectoryRead is called, well, it creates a custom dir reader, and this is the custom dir reader, and it doesn't really copy any files to PubMedia, it just logs a message that the method was called, so we can check that it works. But of course we could put any logic we need into here. So how do we start? Well, first we need to create an etcdi.xml file. And now we want to configure a constructor argument for the product type. So we need to add a type node for Magento Catalog Model Product. And now we specify the file system argument value. So file system, XSI type is object, and the value here is our class name of the custom file system class. All right. And that's all. Now let's clear the config and full page cache and load a product page and then check the logs. So currently my log directory is empty. And now let's reload. So here's a product detail page with a product that has a media gallery. It'll take a moment because the config cache was flushed. Takes a few seconds to rebuild. Okay, and now to check our rewrite was used, let's have a look into the system log. Yeah, and indeed, here we can see getAbsolutePath was actually called quite a lot on our customized instance. And just to be sure, the rewrite is really only used for product instances. Let's create a different class that also depends on the file system object. And check the original file system is injected and not our custom new one. We can use the REPL to try this out. I'll just call it example. Let's configure the constructor. And we want to receive an instance of the file system class. So I want to copy a reference here. Copy reference, paste. Okay, that's the constructor signature. And we'll just print out the class name. So that's the class, and now we'll use the ObjectManager to instantiate it. And here we go, we can see the original file system was injected, not our custom one. This kind of argument rewrite is a lot less conflict prone compared to rewrites with preferences, because it is only valid within the scope of one type. But we do need to keep in mind that if a different module were to configure the same type argument too, there would be a module conflict, just like two modules declaring a preference for the same type. The last loaded module wins in this case. Because of this potential issue, it's a good rule of thumb to try and avoid any kind of rewrite. If it is possible to do a customization without a rewrite, great! But if a rewrite is required, it's best to configure it as a type argument rewrite. Only if that is not possible, a preference override should be considered. Magento gives us even more elegant ways of customizing Magento than rewrites, namely plugins. But these will be covered in the next video.